Hey boys and girls, Miss Gray here. I know it's the day before Easter, but I just had a story on my mind that I wanted to share with you. Do you remember that time in November before Thanksgiving when I shared a story with you about the two Native American Indian boys? Remember how the story told how they thought they were brave and as grown as their elders, and they wanted to prove to the elders that they were just as grown as anyone else, that they were brave. Remember how they decided that they were going to spend the night on the island in the middle of the pond? Remember what it was that scared them? Well, the story I want to share with you today is similar to that. It's not about Indians. Doesn't have anything to do with a real pond, but it's a story for the holiday. It'll remind you something about this holiday that's coming up tomorrow. And when you get finished listening to the story, you can have a chance to tell the story too. It's a draw and tell story, and hopefully you'll have a chance to share it with someone next week or tomorrow on Easter. I'm going to have to position my phone in an unusual way, so hopefully you'll be able to see the story that I'm sharing. And the story goes something like this. Once upon a time, Mrs. Gray and Miss Bird wanted to take the class on a field trip. And they decided they were going to go to a special park that the boys and girls love to go to. And what was so nice about this field trip was that it was a walking field trip. They didn't have to take the bus. They could walk to get there. And this field trip was going to be at a special park. So Miss Bird and Miss Gray lined the boys and girls up, and they started to walk. They walked and they walked and they walked outside until they noticed that on the path of walking to the park, they noticed a car that had parked on the side of the road. And it looked something like this. It was kind of in their way. So the line of boys and girls and teachers had to go around the parked car. And they continued to walk, and they traveled along until they saw another parked car. And when they saw the second parked car, they knew what they had to do. They were going to have to take their line and travel around that parked car. And they did. They continued on their journey, walking along the town of Benson until they finally reached their destination, the park. Now at this park, there were lots of fun things that boys and girls enjoyed playing on. One of the things that the boys and girls enjoyed playing on were the rocks. There were some really cool rocks at this park, and the kids loved climbing on the rocks. This is what one of the rocks looked like. And this was another rock, not too far away. Boys and girls loved to climb those rocks, and then they would jump off of the side of the rock, and they took turns doing that and had the most fun climbing rocks and jumping off. There was another rock pretty close by, but it was an unusual shaped rock, almost in the shape of a triangle. Looked something like that. And the boys and girls didn't climb on that rock as much to jump off, because this was a special rock to them when they traveled to the park, for this was the rock that they used to pretend they were fishing. You see, at this park, there were two bushes. One bush was here, and another bush was here. And underneath these two bushes were long sticks. And the boys and girls loved to go underneath those two bushes and get a stick. And they would come and stand on that rock that looked kind of like a triangle. And they would reach their sticks out and pretend as though they were fishing in a nice pond full of fish. They would pretend they had a big juicy worm on a hook on the end of their fishing line. And on this side of the rock, 3 kids would stand, pretending to fish together. Now, as you can imagine, when boys and girls would see them fishing, they would run underneath those bushes and they would grab their own fishing poles. But only about 3 more could fit on that triangle rock. And so one would stretch their fishing pole that way. One would stretch their fishing pole that way. And the last one would stretch their fishing pole that way. And they loved to pretend to fish. Now, climbing rocks and pretending to fish weren't the only fun things that boys and girls liked to do on that trip to the park. Another thing that they really enjoyed doing was going down the slide. One of the slides was fast. And when kids would climb to the top, they would zoom down that slide. Someone else would climb to the top of another slide and would zoom down that slide as well. And it was always so much fun to climb up and zoom down and climb up and zoom down. They had the most fun on those slides at the park. Now, this park not only had climbing rocks and a rock for pretend fishing and slides, but something special about this park was this park had a tire swing. And the tire swing was big enough for 3 kids to climb on and swing. So one kid would sit there, another kid would sit there, and another kid would sit there. And they would have the most fun swinging to and fro, to and fro. And when they got finished swinging, well, they would just hop off. And as soon as they did, kind of like at our playground, as soon as they hopped off of a swing, 3 more kids were ready to get right back on it. And they would swing to and fro, back and forth. Now, when they got off of the swing, they would leave the swing empty. No one would be on it. Pretty soon, it was time for the boys and girls to get ready to head back to Benson Elementary School, for it wouldn't be long until it would be car rider time and bus rider time and van rider time, dismissal time. And so the boys and girls lined up and they walked with their teachers back to the school. And they traveled back around the car that was parked. Remember how they had to go around it? And they would walk some more until they got to the next car that was parked, and they had to walk around that one too. And pretty soon they were back where they started, at Benson Elementary School. But on this particular day, when they had gone on this trip and they reached the school again, they noticed something unusual on the sidewalk. For on the sidewalk, they saw white footprints. White footprints. Not a foot like yours or mine, but a white footprint that looked a little bit like, there it is, kind of like that. They noticed those white footprints as they traveled up the sidewalk and into the school, and they even saw some of those footprints as they were walking down the hallway back to the classroom. Can you imagine who would have made those footprints? That's something to think about. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope that over spring break you have a chance to share it with someone new. You'll have to get a piece of paper and a pencil and practice first. But after you've practiced a little while, then you'll be able to tell it without any hesitation at all. I hope you enjoyed the story. Have a great Easter and a wonderful spring break, and I'll talk to you soon.